Hey guys, and welcome to Desserts and Dragons, the show where I make things based on my favorite things in fantasy. Today, we're on episode 2 of the limited series run, where I make a cupcake based on the 5 chromatic dragonflights in D&D. And today, we're talking about the greens, the most treacherous, conniving, slightly ambitious, and also very, very poisonous dragons of the game. The world. When I think about green dragons, my brain instantly goes to Critical Role and Raishan. She was smart, she was cunning, she was scheming, she was there even when you didn't know she was there, and she gave the party a hard time. So today, we're looking at more punchy, kind of refreshing flavors, because it's very sneaky. And we're making lime cupcakes with a key lime pie-inspired cream cheese frosting. Does that sound good? It should be. So we're going to change this up, and we're going to start baking. I like to show the ingredients that I will be using while I do this. And also, the first song is Brighter Than the Sun by Poets of the Fall. I have to listen to Poets of the Fall while I bake, because it always turns out. The first verse is, I'm in way too deep like a poser, and falling for the dreams, just the ground getting closer. I guess that's how our lives get painted in scars. With everything riding on the Joker, with a paradise syndrome strapped on for spurs. Regret is the skin you shed just to make it this far. The rest of the lyrics are going to be linked down below. First things first, preparing the cake mix as per the box's instructions, with a few substitutions, like milk instead of water, butter instead of oil, and adding an extra egg. I talked about this in the last video, but these will make the box cake mix taste more homemade, and you can more than likely fool your friends, just like the green dragons. Also, Crystal's tip for the day is when you are preparing for baking or cooking or whatever have you, get all your ingredients set up ahead of time so you don't sit with camera dead air and have to edit it out in post. I mean, it just helps to get everything set up before you start, including preheating the oven, preparing the pans, that sort of thing. So I cracked all the eggs into one bowl and then started with the butter to get that all melted up. And I, didn't melt it all the way because I am using a teeny tiny bowl and an air fryer to melt it. Don't try this at home. But this will get you a mostly room temperature, not super hot consistency, because if you try just to melt it all the way until it's all liquid, you'll probably end up burning the butter. Also, a mistake I noticed while I was doing this, I measured out the required amount of the butter as per box. I measured the solid amount of butter when really I should have thought about that in its melted state, but it works out in the end because I used the extra butter for something else later on. Now that all the prep work has been done and finished, just add the cake mix, followed by the milk, and then the butter, this is where I realized I was doing something silly, so I decided to measure out the melted butter that I needed for the recipe, and see, there's some left over. Also, since I'm putting warm butter into cold milk, some of it is re-solidifying, but then you just take the scraper and scrape it out into the bowl and you're good to go. Next is the eggs, which I just quickly whipped up, so instead of just you see all the egg yolks, you just see yellow goo. It's good to whip them all up ahead of time just to help the consistency of adding it to the mix. Also, add about a tablespoon of vanilla extract, which I seem to have lost the clip for that, but add the vanilla before you start mixing everything together. Then you're going to add the green dye as well, a good couple of drops to about your desired color, and you're going to mix it together for about 2 minutes with your hand mixers, by hand, or a stand mixer. Get it to a nice airy, fluffy consistency, and then everything's smooth. Next is the muffin lining stage. Woo! I'm going to take the muffin cups and get those going. Now, I actually ran out of muffin cups, so there are going to be a few cupcakes that are uncupped. Make sure, if this happens to you, spray the living hell out of your muffin tray. Trust me, if you think you have enough, add a little bit more, because muffins or cupcakes get really stuck in really easily. It's a time. So make sure that your stuff is sprayed, and I'm making about 2 trays this time. Now, why is this? 2 things. 1, the air. I actually mixed this batch of cupcakes longer than I did the previous batch with the red dragon. I followed the box's instructions to the letter because last time I noticed the cakes were a little dense. So, it says about 2 minutes on the box. Mix it for about 2 minutes. You can undermix it a little bit. As you see, there's still a little bit of lumps in the batter, but that's okay. If you overmix it, you develop the gluten too well, and you also get a dense cupcake. It's a dance. You're walking a fine line between density. The second reason is how I'm portioning them out. I am going a little bit lower, not as high up, so about like halfway up the cupcake instead of 3/4, because even though I like the muffin style cupcakes, it did lead me to compensating with the icing, where I tried to make a pretty rosette on the top, but I used a lot of icing, and some of the comments I got from people who tried the cupcakes here locally, they said that the icing was a bit too much. So now I am going for a less high cupcake so I can do a little bit less icing and see how that ends up. Each time I do these cupcakes, it is a learning experience for me as much as it is for you if you guys are trying these at home. Also, a thing I'm doing here is putting the cups in the middle of the tray, since I wasn't sure how much batter I was going to have. This one, if you put the cupcakes in the middle first, you'll get a more consistent cook, since there is a greater surface area in the middle than on the edges of the pan. And never be afraid of messes, because your girl has a lot of splash damage, apparently, in this episode of portioning cupcakes. It'll mess with your yield a little bit, but don't be afraid of the mess. Sometimes the crunchy parts on the top of the baking sheet actually taste kind of tasty. But just fill up the cupcakes about halfway, a little less. And if you have extra, just add a little bit more and you might end up with a couple of mungo cupcakes. It's okay. We're not being perfect here. We're having fun baking things that are gonna be tasty. And if you have a lot of extra batter, do a 3rd tray. How's that for professional advice? Not. Enjoy the process. Learn as you go, and everything will work out fine. Okay, so my phone crashed in the making of me showing you what it looks like in the oven. Cooked the cupcakes for the amount of time specified on the back of the box. It ended up being around 10 to 12 minutes. I think it's like 12 to 18. Again, look at the box. And those are what the cupcakes look like as they're now out and cooling, and we are going to get started on the buttercream, or at least, in this case, the cream cheese frosting. Start off by adding the softened butter. Room temperature is fabulous. I cut them into small cubes so that way it's easier to mix them and combine them. It's just a preference thing more than anything else. Things learned in culinary. Next is the cream cheese. Same thing. Room temperature, softened-ish. Cut them into cubes. Make it easier on everybody involved, which is mostly you in this case, or me. And then also, add a little bit of salt. I know this probably sounds a little bit weird, but it'll cut down on some of the richness. And tablespoon of vanilla, or teaspoon. Probably should have added a little bit more. Yeah, adding a teeny bit of salt to a cream cheese frosting recipe, it just helps balance it out. It's solid. Alright, so next you're going to mix the butter, cream cheese, salt, and vanilla together until it's nice and smooth and the color has lightened. But we're going to come back to that later. right now it is lime time. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your zester, your microplane, and you're going to put a paper towel down so you don't get lime zest everywhere. And then you're just going to zest down the first layer. And so it's like you do it until the dark green is gone, but not so much that you see white. You see white, you've gone too far, and you're getting closer to the fruit away from the rind. You don't technically have to have lime zest. This is just an extra step to add more flavor. It does give a bit of like a grassy aftertaste, but it's not in a negative way. Using zest and juice just gives you just that elevated extra flavor. But the lime zest part itself isn't necessary as long as you have the lime juice. I say this because I acknowledge that some people don't have a zester. They might not be expensive, but they could be too expensive, and I don't want to turn anyone away from this recipe. Once the butter and cream cheese mixture is light and pale, you want to add about 3 to 4 cups of icing sugar. Full disclosure, mine was short, about half a cup. I didn't realize, but it was too late. I already started it. And then you're going to just whip it again really quick until everything is combined. Once the icing sugar has been combined with the mixture of butter and cream cheese, vanilla, and salt, just scrape down the bottom and fold in whatever sugar is left on the top, just like you see I'm doing here. As you can see, it is pretty loose. That is because the lack of that half a cup of icing sugar. But that's okay. We're working with what we got, and I have a few little tricks, but I'm going to finish zesting this other lime and getting the juice out of the fruit. All right, so now I'm adding the zest to the cream cheese frosting. For next time I do this recipe, I will be adding half of the zest into the cream and half of the zest into the cake. But now it is juice time. This is a comedy of errors moment. First, don't use a steak knife to cut fruit. You're not gonna get anywhere in a hurry. As you can see, I was struggling with it. Also, roll the fruit first before you slice it. That will loosen the juice and get it easier to squeeze out. I gave myself the hardest type of way to do this ever. I regret all of my life choices. Please do not do as I do in this moment. Please. Okay, squeeze the juice into the bowl. You can squeeze it through your hand. You can squeeze it using a spoon. You can just stick it into those spaces. You can also push against the fruit backwards. But yeah, I had a bad time, and I only have myself to blame in this moment. Next step is to add about half of the juice into the cream cheese frosting mixture. Stir, make sure it's all incorporated, and then it's dye time. You're gonna add probably about 4 or 5 drops into the frosting. And remember how I said wear gloves? My hands were green for like a week. No matter how many times I washed them, I tried to do this very quickly and got icing or dye all over my hands. It was hilarious. Anyway, mix until you have a desired consistency. Now, since the cream cheese frosting is very light in color, it's gonna, just like the red, take a lot of dye. And I was already in the risk of having a very loose, unpipeable frosting. So I did something that I kind of regret, but also was really tasty. But as I continued to tease as to what I did that made this extra tasty and extra weird, right now I'm going to poke holes into this cupcake, and we're going to take that half of lemon juice that I left aside, and we're going to actually be brushing the juice over top of the cupcakes, and the juice is going to soak into that top layer of cakey goodness. It was actually really good. It added a bit more moisture to the cake. Not that the cake was dry, but it was just that extra little bit of flavor to give it that limeness. So considering I wasn't happy with the consistency or the color, I just felt no matter what I did, it was too bright, I made up a quick and dirty chocolate ganache with a 1/4 cup of chocolate, the leftover butter, which was probably about 4 tablespoons worth, and then a splash of milk. And what I'm doing is taking the dark chocolate since I'm lactose intolerant. And it's still really hot, but not completely melted. And then I add the butter to it. And I'm just stirring the unholy hell out of this thing until it is super smooth. Once it is super smooth, I'm going to be adding it to the frosting. This has two benefits. One, another level of flavor. It adds a little bit of bitterness. And I figured with green dragons being poisonous, having those bitter flavors, but still tasty, just kind of led toward the concept of being poisoned by gas without making it something very repulsive. Also, be careful of the stuff on your hands and use a paper towel so you don't get chocolate everywhere, especially if you have a pet, because chocolate is not good for pets. So I was very, very careful cleaning all of this mess up as I stir and do and taste, and I took a little bit of the frosting to see if the flavors would blend together, and they worked. I just decided to go for it. It was a choice. With a quick prayer to the baking gods, I added the dark chocolate. And this is how it ended up looking. Not gonna lie, it went too dark. In the right lighting, you can actually see the green a lot, but when I first did it, I was kind of terrified. I could hear my art friends just be like, adding brown to things just makes it brown. And, yeah, it was a choice. Can't take it back now. If you're unsure about something, this is the second time I say this, take a small amount of the icing, the frosting, the buttercream, add a little bit of the thing you want to add. So that way, if it feels like you push too far, you don't necessarily ruin the entire thing. Not that this is ruined. This worked. It still worked out. I don't know how. But yeah, small amount testers, and then add stuff to the full product. Alrighty, so now it is time to pipe the, what looks like, as I'm editing this, looks brown. But I tell you, in the sunlight, it looks green. And honestly, I feel like that tracks, because if you look at a green dragon, they have multiple shades of green on their body, ranging from a brownish, brackish, dark green. So, it kind of works. I'm saying it was intentional and not an accident. So if the light hits these cupcakes the right way, it looks like there's multiple shades of green. So, it works. While I pipe, let's talk about the greens some more. So you'll usually find a green dragon in a forest. And a forest controlled by a green dragon is pretty easy to spot. There is a constant fog in a green dragon's forest, carrying the scent of acrid, acidity, poisonous, gross dragon breathness. Moss-covered trees grow close together except for winding pathways that act like a maze toward the heart of the forest where you'll find the dragon. Any light that parts into the forest will have a greenish hue. So, if it looks like a fey trap, or at least in this case a dragon's lair, it's probably a dragon's lair. Like most dragons like caves, the green is no exception. Either on the edge of a sheer cliff or cut into the hillside, hidden mostly from prying eyes. Green dragons aren't against water, and sometimes their cave entrance will also be hidden by a waterfall. Their lair could even be partially submerged in a lake, or just completely covered by lush vegetation. I'm getting most of this information from D&D Beyond, just so, full disclosure, we're clear. The lair effects on this thing are really cool. Like a labyrinthine passage within 1 mile of the dragon's lair. Thick thickets that act as 10-foot high, 10-foot thick walls block line of sights. These dragons use rodents and birds as eyes and ears through their forests D&D style security cameras. Quick break from Dragon Talk. As you can see, I'm running a spoon along the edges of the cupcake. It's better to do a knife or a long toothpick, so that way you're not like carving into the sides of the cupcake because of the angle of the spoon, which I did at least twice. Once the green dragon dies, defeated by adventurers, or, you know, it could die of old age just 1,000 years later, it loses its supernatural link with the birds and rodents, but the thickets that surround them and create the labyrinths and tripping hazards for adventurers, they remain. But they will lose their thorns within 1d10 days. You roll a d10, find the number, and will become mundane, just, you know, normal thickets. Less thorny. I said that. Not only are green dragons tenacious and tricksy and mischievous, they also have a quite nasty temper, and they take a sick and twisted pleasure of corrupting those of good nature and good heart to be part of their team. I say that in air quotes. Mostly it's to get to their own ends, and the ends always justify the means, and if it means making the good guy do the bad thing, that's just part of the fun. A green dragon is most recognized by the curved jawline and the crest that begins near its eyes and continues all the way down its spine, reaching at full height just behind the skull. A green dragon has no external ears, but bears legendary spike plates that run down the sides of its neck. During the wormling stage, the dragon's scales are so dark that they nearly appear black, and as the dragon ages, it becomes lighter and the scales grow larger, looking toward more forest and emerald or olive greens to help it blend in with its forested surroundings. A dragon's legs are longer in relation to its body and to any other dragon, enabling it to pass through the underbrush and the forested debris as it walks. With its equally long neck, an older green dragon can peer over the tops of trees without even rearing up. Lastly, they enjoy intimidating those that are weaker and manipulating those that are stronger. They are the kings and queens of manipulation, double talk, and two-facedness. And they have a lust for power. Okay, y'all, it's time for the try. I'm a mess, but honestly, not bad. And that was the episode. Final thoughts? They were good. I love the cheesecakiness of the buttercream, and the lime was very refreshing. It was super tasty. It didn't hit nearly as hard as the Red Heart cupcakes did, but they were still good overall. I don't know if I'll make this again, unlike the other one. I'll probably make it again if I have a craving for cupcakes. But if you want to try it, go for it. And if you find any improvements, talk about what you did differently, because I'm always curious. For the next color, you will either be seeing a poll on that side of the screen, maybe? We're just gonna do that. It'll pop up on one side, and probably has been there for the entire premiere if you're watching this live. If I didn't do it as a premiere, you will see the poll on Instagram. And I like the idea for this limited run series to be chosen by you guys. If you want to see the black dragon scale next, pick black. If you want to see the blue, you want to see the white. Your mileage may vary. Sounds fun. At least I think so. I hope you think so. If you're enjoying Desserts and Dragons, and you want to see more, you want to see me do some crazy things, because I've got plans and a plot, and possibly even some schemes. Down below, you will find my Ko-fi page. I'm still working on it, and I'm really rubbish at trying to promote the damn thing, because I've had it for at least half of the length of my other channel. All proceeds from the Ko-fi will go back into the channel. Ingredients, tech, recipe books. I was thinking about doing some stuff from the D&D cookbook or the Alexandria cookbook. Any little fantasy things I might just do the recipes of because I think it might be fun. But that stuff does kind of cost a little bit of the gold, so if you can, feel free to buy me a coffee down below. If you can't, that's cool too, because we're still going to do this. This is the plan. I've got at least 10 more episodes in concept stages right now. It just helps lessen the load, because unlike the other channel, this one, the money is the thing. And that's going to be the thing from stopping me from doing some really crazy shit. A lot of these things are going to be super, super easy. Some of these stuff's super crazy. Anywho, enough of that. I hate promoting the Ko-fi. It makes me feel squeezy. But I was told to by my friends. So we're doing it. Until next time, I hope you are enjoying Desserts and Dragons. I love and appreciate every single one of you. We'll see you guys in the next video.